in the enrichment committee as well as the counselors to share kind of a little bit more about our journey, both personally and professionally, and just to give back to our school home for our children. And we've been loved being part of the Brentwood community throughout our years. And one thing that I just really want to highlight is this opportunity to talk is kind of like I said, our swan song. You know, it's so many people at this stage right now are asking, what are you guys going to do during empty nesters? And who knows? Sharing a little bit about kind of our journey, what matters most to us as a family, and just kind of infusing that passion and compassion for student healthy growth is kind of what led us to present today. So we're excited to let you know that finding the X, we're going to use maps as kind of our imagery for our presentation today. So hopefully you'll kind of grasp that and appreciate that. But we're really going to map out your child's college certs through the 4 years of high school. And so many of you may be midway through your high school career. It's amazing, and we're going to root for you. So in no way do we want to imply that if when we start and talk a little bit about freshman year on, that anyone's behind, right? That's really important to know, right? It's never too late. I'm just a huge believer in that in so many ways. But we are going to kind of map out a vision or some suggestions, and we're hoping that even just a little bit of what we share today will be helpful on your journey. Okay. So kind of we're using that idea of finding your X, kind of that idea of what is your treasure, by kind of sharing our why a little bit. We shared a little bit about kind of our journey as practitioners, more me working in schools with students for many years, and then certainly as parents, you know, it's just been a joy to kind of walk with our two boys on their journey as well. But the other piece that we want to really highlight is we're kind of using a guided vision and ways that hopefully as the journey goes through that, it can be a real positive experience for both your students and you as parents. And we're really grateful so many students are here. So thanks for giving up some of your Wednesday. Hopefully you don't have much study to make up for it a little bit. But you'll see quickly kind of our design of the presentation is going to highlight kind of both of our kind of interests and kind of passions that we've done. Andy is a professor, as shared earlier, so he has a lot of developmental kind of history, wisdom that he's going to instill in kind of our sharing. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more intentionally about kind of an action plan of ideas and resources and QR codes that you can use to link and learn more. So we will share a decent amount. We're definitely more like interactive people, so it does feel weird to kind of be here we are on the stage. But if you have questions, and certainly if it's relevant to something we're talking about, feel free to raise your hand, but we will leave some time for questions. Okay?
So one thing that we thought about when we thought about starting this is so many people talk about finding the best fit in a college. That tends to be what people think about when they're looking at a college search. We want to find the best fit for a student. And that is really a good point. You do want to find the best fit. The struggle with that is that adolescents are growing up. A big part of being a teenager is actually figuring out who you are, what you want to do, what you're interested in. And so finding something that fits with that can be a real challenge. And a lot of times it gets down to something that just feels right. And that's okay. I mean, certainly having something feel right is better than it not feeling right. But we're hoping that by some of these techniques that we suggest to you, that maybe finding that best fit will be not necessarily easier, but you can feel more confident. So this is, got a couple of slides here from someone who's really one of the top college counselors in Middle Tennessee. Her name is Janet Schneider. She's a long time at the University School of Nashville. She's actually doing some private college coaching and counseling now. And I was able to teach a course with her in college admissions for a number of years. And this was a quote that she liked to share with our students and with parents that she would talk to. And if the process is about finding what is the best fit for me, we have to realize that the truth is students can't determine their best fit if they don't know who me is. And knowing who me is entirely developmental in nature. So we'll try to unpack what we mean by developmental in that process. So we realize if you came to this presentation, college is probably on the radar. It's probably something that you're thinking about. And you could be at any stage in that process. But realize that when we talk about finding the best fit, we're also talking about post-secondary. So there's a lot of things you can do after you graduate high school. One of them is start your career. And I actually teach a career development class, and we talk a lot about how do we find that right career. College is often synonymous in that choice for people who are looking at college as the next step. But these are just a list of pretty common possibilities. You've got four-year colleges, two-year colleges, or community colleges. You've got vocational schools, technical training, which can take a various number of years. Of course, there's the military. People take postgraduate years. It's pretty common for athletes, perhaps, and others, to take a year after high school to maybe do a little bit more academics to get them ready for college, but also maybe to prepare them for something else like preparing a sport. People take gap years. There's a lot of literature growing on the power of a gap year. What's a good gap year? What's not a good gap year? And of course, looking at schools all across the globe. Now, we're not going to hone in on any of these specifically, but as we're talking tonight, the thought is that we certainly would suggest a post-secondary option, that you consider something on this list. And as you're thinking about it, what we're going to hopefully help you do is figure out which of these things might be the best thing for me. We're going to try a poll here and see if this hopefully will work. Okay, so in studies of why people choose the colleges they choose, there's two main reasons that kind of bubble to the surface. And you've probably heard people debating about, oh, is college worth the investment? How much, what's my return on investment in that college education? And that debate is really fueled by a couple of different opinions. One of them is that you're going to college to increase your job opportunities, hopefully increase your income. That the worth of a college is based on how much you're going to earn in your career. Second is, well, that's important, but really the most important thing would be that I'm going to get a good education and I'm going to grow. I'm going to personally grow, become a better person, learn more about who I am, et cetera, and get a good education in the midst of it. So it's not that these are mutually exclusive, but people tend to value one over the other. So we're going to ask you to take your phone out, you probably have already. If not, you can just scan that QR code, and this will be a really quick choice. Which of those would you say is, you think is the reason for the college choice? Which would you select? Thank you all. All right, so hopefully you all had a chance to do that and pick your choice. You can see almost twice as many responses on increased job opportunities and earning power compared to personal growth through a solid general education. And there's actually been quite a few studies done on this, and there's not necessarily one choice that rises above the others. But this is a pretty informative piece about what's ultimately driving a person's decision about where they go, and when they go to school, what they study. And what we didn't do was split this up between what do the parents say, what do the kids say. Sometimes that can be an interesting distinction. I think this is a good conversation, though, for parents to have with their children. Are you all on the same page with this? Is that why you think you're going to school? And if it's this, how much earning power? What would be a successful college piece? And if it's this, what do you mean by a solid education? What kinds of things do you want to gain from that? I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time looking at all the backgrounds about why people would choose what they choose, but I think this is an interesting distinction to see kind of who's in the room, kind of what your thoughts are.
Thank you for participating. It is really interesting to see, even within our space, kind of where the scale tips. But I hope you see, even just by this first kind of opportunity to engage, is our goal is to open up an opportunity for you really to have a great conversation with, parent-child about kind of your why. Again, ultimately back to our slides of kind of like the X, where that what is the treasure really in the end of the day, and how can you find that together?
Yeah, you can take it back to the slide. Thank you. So here's a quote that kind of builds on what we were talking about earlier about what adolescents are doing, moving from kind of dependence on the family, depending on their parents, to independence, from being a child to growing into an adult, from being protected by their parents and their family to being self-regulated. And that college process drops right into the middle of that. It kind of lands in the midst of this process of growing up. And for up to a year and a half, if you think about all of senior year or most of junior year, perhaps most of junior year into senior year, that college process is going into the midst of an unfinished journey. That's one of the reasons we chose this analogy to finding a treasure map, because it's a journey that students are on. Some of the key beliefs that I think are the foundation for what we're talking about, that discovering a sense of self is part of that developmental task. Understanding who you are as a person, as a child growing up. And that's the time that college process is taking place, which could make it so confusing, it can make it so difficult. It can be one of those things that can allow a parent perhaps to be more excited about the college search than the student, because for the student, it's bringing up a lot of these confusing pieces. And students don't want to let us down, they don't want to let their friends down, they don't want to let themselves down, but there's a lot of uncertainty just built into that cake. The college process itself, though, is a huge opportunity, because in doing it, if you take the opportunity, it doesn't start freshman year, but we're at a high school talk, so we're going to kind of start freshman year. If you start that early in the process, there's the potential to help move people along that developmental continuum, and if they get further down that path, they're going to have a better sense of self, and in the end, the outcome's going to be more positive. The more effectively they move through that phase, the more quickly and efficiently they can move into that big thing called adulthood. When we talk about sense of self, some of the things that we mean by that. One, having a sense of competence, a sense of efficacy, a sense of, I can do this. Just think about it. You go to college, you are kind of on your own, you're a bit of in a cocoon, right? There's a lot of support for you. Meals are often provided for you. Housing is often provided for you. But there's a lot of decisions that you have to make as a college student, right? And so having some sense of confidence, I can do that, I feel like I can do it, is important. A realistic self-image. Who am I? And being able to say that with some sense of authenticity. A sense of the future. You don't know where you're going to go, but some sense that there is a future out there and there's some path that you're on. Keep in mind, you're not locked into whatever you might decide to do. I tell the story in my career development class that when I grew up, I knew I wanted to be a sports announcer from a very early age. I was one of those people that would sit on the front porch and I would listen to baseball games when you would typically listen on the radio, and I would keep score. Like, I was probably the only person out there that was probably doing that, right? That's what I felt. But I did it all the time, and I kept score, and I knew I wasn't going to be good enough to play baseball, but I knew I wanted to be a part of it, and I knew I wanted to be a sports announcer. So I went to college, I majored in broadcast journalism, and I told them on day one, I want to be a baseball announcer. That's all I want to do. I took all my classes around that. He said, well, you might want to broaden your horizons a little bit. I said, okay, I'll do football and basketball too. They said, you can't major in that. You can't major in sports. I said, okay, How about broadcast, just broadcast journalism, maybe broadcast marketing or something. But it was all broadcasting. I got my first job in Manhattan, Kansas, the Little Apple. And I did it professionally for 2 years, after college doing it for 4 years. But I knew somewhere in there I wanted a little bit more. And so I ended up choosing to come back to school, moved to Nashville, and decided to pursue counseling. In part because I knew I wanted to help people, also because it just looked like the counselors had fun during the day. It didn't look like they worked too hard. I became a counselor and I knew how off I was. But the point is, that totally changed my path. And eventually, I became a college professor. Dev in the graduate program. It's one of those things that when you look back on it, when I was 10, 12, 14, a senior in high school, would have never dreamed I would be a college professor living in Nashville, Tennessee. Probably could barely point it out on the map. But here I am. And so all of this to say, all this planning that you do, who knows where you're going to end up? But if you can have a better sense of self, you're going to feel better about who you are when you get there. This last point, having a defined sense of ethics, a big part of growing up was determining right and wrong. Determining what's the right action to take here, what's the good action to take here, what's the helpful action to take. And that's a big part of deciding what you're doing when you're growing up. So, I'm a professor, so I have to have models like this so that it feels like a legit talk. So, there's actually many models to college and career readiness, and there's a lot on this perhaps, but just basically, if you kind of go clockwise around this circle, you spend a lot of time in school learning how to think. You get filled with lots of knowledge that they test you on, right? You just show how much you know. You also, while you're going through school, you're taking skills, life skills classes, you're learning how to act, you're learning what to do as you grow up. And then you reach this final quadrant where they're ready to kind of push you out of the nest, and that's when you have to go. That's when the transition is happening. You've built all of this stuff up, and now you're ready to be on your own. And there's a lot of things that prepare you for that. Understanding what your choices are, understanding who you are, understanding your identity. Those are all pieces of that point.
Fun fact, though, as we transition to the next slide, we're going to kind of infuse one of my favorite authors, Stephen Covey, right? A lot of folks have read about him. One of the big ideas that I really embrace and try to really talk about often is kind of that begin with the end in mind, right? So you just heard like Andy's trajectory. One fun fact, though, he didn't share is that element of sometimes, like when you think about what did I love in kindergarten, and right now I am an elementary school counselor, so I see what they loved in kindergarten. And it's really powerful, that insatiable love of learning, right? Kind of what makes them tick. But in life, you may go on a journey, in your collegiate journey and your career journey, and go a little bit away from those things that really made you tick when you were little. But Andy now is back to the love of broadcasting baseball because he gets a chance to be in the booth at Brentwood High School baseball games. And that truly is, I have to remind him sometimes, that is not your full-time job. Because he spends a lot of time with the playlists and all that stuff, which is amazing, right? But I think for the students here today too, it's like we really want you to think about what you love. And it's like one of those times where like if you could do anything, rumor of some snow, you never know, temperature might drop enough tonight, right? But tomorrow, if you're home, like what would be like your dream day? That matters, right? To kind of have that in mind and how you can build your love of what that is into your journey. So with that said, I do want to take a minute to ask the crowd. I put this question in the middle, and I was so grateful when we did our kind of Google image map search, which we have a lot that we found as part of our PowerPoint today. This one really meant a lot because it highlights how your starting point and your ending point often can be really close to each other without you even realizing it, like the scenic route, right? Sometimes you come back to what matters most. With that said, I have two questions in the middle, and I'm curious if anyone knows my source for these questions. Reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking and what was the outcome? Oh yes, Miss Moonshower in the back. Yeah, bing, bing, bing. She also is a wonderful teacher here at Brentwood High. She might be a little biased. This question here is one of the essay questions on the Common Application. The Common Application, anyone want to describe it, what it is? Student want to be so brave? Oh yes, great. Ranger, thank you.
Hi. So it's kind of like a first step in your college application. It's where you kind of fill out all your basic information, you write your Common App essay, and then after you finish your Common App, you can then go on to the university essays and fill out their information. Yeah.
Good answer. Well done. Well done. We're so proud. Miss Wood will be one of our counselors here. She's very proud up there. Yes, so the Common App is one of the tools that many of you will use to apply for college, right? It depends on what colleges you're looking for, but most colleges these days, you can apply through the Common App, okay? And over the last few years, a number of the essay questions have remained the same, okay? So the reason I wanted to put this question on first, and especially if maybe you're 9th grade, 10th grade, even if you're not, again, beginning with the end in mind sometimes may mean sneak a peek at the Common App. Take a look at where you're gonna be senior year, the fall of your senior year, applying to colleges. See what they're asking. It could change for sure, but I'll tell you right now, this question has not changed much over the last few years. So if you know freshman year, sophomore year, that by the end of your high school career, you'd have the opportunity to answer this as a choice of an essay, it might be good to start thinking about, how would I answer that? This is in my opinion, this is a really great question, right? Because it's encouraging growth. And it kind of comes back to what we hope that you'll gain from today. That growth process has intention, and sometimes the choices you make of how you spend your time, how you challenge yourself, who you get to know, mentors, different things like that, you really could turn that into a really great piece of writing too. All right, so one of my new favorite resources, we're going to mention 2 different times tonight. This is time number 1. This is called Making Caring Common, and it's a project that has been conducted by the Harvard School of Education. The initial report that they made was called Turning the Tide, and basically it was designed to build college admissions offices, like a community amongst colleges across the country, to really have a common vision of support for students and families, high school counselors, admissions counselors, to have kind of a common purpose and idea of supporting kids going through the college process. So the Turning the Tide 1 was all about caring, hence the making caring common, right? How can we build a caring culture in our growing adolescents as they get ready for college? So it's a really great study. The website, again, you'll get linked to later. But one of the big recommendations even is it's instead of signing up for 1 million clubs in high school, it's not quantity, it's, what do you think? Quality. That was what they recommended, right? So even admissions counselors at Harvard, we're telling you, please don't say you're in 15,000 clubs. Engage and care about the ones that you're passionate about. That's valuable, right? It's a valuable way, and a valuable way to grow, right? So Turning the Tide 2, which is more was more 2020 2022, the most recent emergence, so it's very recent, they decided to turn their focus a little bit more, again, back to that ethical piece, right? How can we build that idea of an ethical growth in students, and how can we have that, really be the tide that they follow through the college process. So again, we'll build on this, but it's just something for you to know and think about, right? So your character, your well-being, again, mental health we'll talk about too. It matters not only to all of us as part of your high school years, but to your college community as well. So I think that's really good news. Okay, so then thinking about becoming developmental aware, just a point of reference, because we're giving you like a lot of pieces here, and we're about to give you some more. It's that if you don't know where you are, right, it's hard to know where you're going. So really gonna kind of sit with knowing who you are so we can build that idea of confidence in the direction that you're going.
So one thing that you have to keep in mind when you're putting together college applications, especially if you're going somewhere that might be more highly selective, is you're probably putting your application in with thousands of other people, and somehow you need to stand out. And not all of us are going to come up with some cure to a disease or create some machine that is going to change the world, though some people will do that. So how are you going to stand out? And one of the ways that you can stand out is certainly to be a leader in something, but another is to be able to show the college that even if you're still trying to figure out who you are, you do have some sense of experiences that have been important to you. And that's one reason to think about those experiences all through high school, so that they start to make an imprint on your mind. Some of the competencies that are helpful to think about working on as you're growing up. Again, having self-awareness, making responsible decisions, building relationship skills, learning how to manage yourself. These are all things that are not only going to help you figure out who you are, they're going to help you stand out in any activity that you do, so that maybe you will get an opportunity to be a leader in a club, a leader in an activity. You'll get a chance to maybe make a decision that you might write about later. These are things that don't just happen by accident. It's like anything, you kind of make your own luck, and the more you practice some of these competencies, the more you're going to stand out when the time comes. So when we think about development, there's a number of different factors of positive youth development. And again, I'm just going to hit some of these highlights of things to be thinking about. One is that the adolescent's brain is growing. And where it was when it's 14 is going to be a very different place than when it's 18. It also means that decisions that are made are often going to be peer-driven, maybe not as thought out as well as others. So this is a lot of learning that goes on, obviously, through that period of time. And you're going to have a better understanding of things as you get older. The social environment is such an important part of being a teenager. That social environment, in part, because of where a person's brain is going to drive a lot of the activities a person does, a lot of the decisions that the person makes, and a lot of ways that they present themselves. Positive psychology, which has really grown over the last couple of decades, is rooted not on what's wrong with a person and what's broken, but really what's right. And we're going to talk about a couple of instruments that you may use that will help you frame yourself in a letter or in an application. Two of the really famous positive psychology instruments are character strengths, or the Strengths Finder, and values and action. Two of the founders of positive psychology were the ones that created those instruments. Developing those skills along the way. And then this person, Reed Larson, is one of the founders of positive youth development. He talks about building intrinsic motivation. Motivating inside yourself and not always having to be externally motivated by, say, if I don't do this, I'm going to get a bad grade. Or if I don't do this, I'm going to get in trouble. But find stuff down deep inside, and if you're doing things you enjoy, that's easier to do. Some of the big theories in developmental psychology that kind of give support to this. One, probably the most famous, is someone named Erik Erikson. If you've taken a psychology class, you've heard of Erik Erikson. He suggested that adolescence is the time of identity development, trying to figure out who you are in the midst of everything. And if you accomplish that, it says you've reached what he calls fidelity with who you are and what the world expects you to be. Lev Vygotsky was a Russian psychologist, and he created something called the zone of proximal development, which is a big fancy word for basically meaning those things that you can do for help, with help, are just as important as the things you can do by yourself. So if you actually need some help to do something, you can actually do it. So think about those things that you're learning how to do. Oftentimes, you need someone to help you do them. And a lot of our society discounts that. They only pay attention to what you do by yourself. Think about all the standardized tests you've ever taken. How many times have they let you have a coach there telling you what to say? Not very often, right? They put a lot of value on independence. But in reality, most of life is not a standardized test. Most of life, you're going to have people helping you along the way. And eventually, you might be able to do it by yourself. So don't shy away from those things that maybe you need some coaching or some help or a friend to help you do. Because those are you doing them as well. And at some point, it'll transition to where you're helping somebody else. All of that is called scaffolding. Getting help along the way, finding supports along the way. Just because something's hard doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It means maybe you need some scaffolding, support, help to help you do it well. And then finally, this person called Yuri Bronfenbrenner, who had a systemic view of human development, which meant not only did you need help along the way, but everything you did is rooted in your community. It's rooted in your society, in your belief system, in your culture. Again, you're not doing stuff all by yourself. So often, it gets really overwhelming. And isn't it ironic that teenagers, who are the most social of probably all the developmental stages, might be enculturated to believe if they need help to do something, that there's somehow it's not good enough. Lean into that social development, lean into getting help, and you'll be able to really soar. Cascade theory is another developmental theory that suggests how we develop over time, and skills in a variety of domains are getting developed. But here's the thing. When you get good at one thing, that actually bleeds over and helps you in something else. And so as you start to master a variety of different skills, they actually improve your overall performance. This is why oftentimes now, even in sports, they're saying, kids that play multiple sports as a desirable thing, in part because they're learning different types of skills. If you have lots of different types of activities you like, it's not to have 1,000 activities to do, but learning one thing is going to help you do something else. And again, having those connections across peers, family, school, community are also important. Patience is also important. So, I was actually heard this just on the radio today. I put this link if you're interested in, I can't really see it. We're going to share our slides at the end. You'll be able to see this link. Mental well-being. We're talking a lot of positive, right? We're in the midst of a mental health crisis in this country, especially amongst young people. 37% of teenagers in a recent survey said that they have, quote unquote, poor mental health. They're having some type of mental health issue. That means if you put 3 teenagers in a room, one of them is having a mental health issue, at least one that we would know about, okay? A little more than one. Parents often overemphasize getting into the good college, getting the good grades, and it's okay to emphasize those things, but not at the expense of a person's mental well-being. And I think parents in the room pay attention to this. Kids in the room, remember what I just said on the last slide, asking for help, really important. And don't stop doing it when you get out of high school. I work at a college where our university counseling center is overwhelmed with the number of kids that need help. And it seems to be getting more and more the case. Now, maybe there's more of a mental health issue. Maybe more people are asking for help. Not sure. But don't be afraid to do it. Here's some steps that they listed. This is actually from the Yale Center on Student Wellbeing. Dr. Lori Jacobs. Yes, Laurie Santos at Yale. 4 steps to mental well-being. Be kinder to yourself, help others, focus on others, help make them happy, do some volunteer work, get outside yourself a little bit. Listen to your emotions and learn how to regulate them if they're starting to overwhelm you. And then number 4, which many of us don't do, get plenty of sleep. All of those things will help you along the way. And the last thing I would say is, as we understand a person growing up and what their role is going to be in life, you can start practicing this. So college doesn't have to wait until after you graduate high school. There's a lot of ways to try out what you like about a college. Sure, you can go visit a college, you can read about a college, but there's things like dual enrollment, taking a college class while you're in high school, doing a residential experience like a summer program or something where you actually get to spend extended time on a college campus. There's a few of these that they do here in the state of Tennessee. And then shadowing, spending a day or such, going and seeing what types of careers you might like, which could also be on a college campus, visiting classes and things like that, other than just the traditional college visit. And when you do those things, you start to have a better sense of what you might like and what you might want in a college.
All right, how are we doing? That was a lot of like the behind the developmental college growth, right? I like that. But we're going to actually bring around a handout right now, and you're welcome to take one per person. Yeah, the white one. Yeah. So we just wanted to give you a chance to kind of start. You've heard a lot of things, and maybe some things are like, sitting with you or you're curious. We're going to give you a space to write down kind of some initial thoughts. And I'm going to have the next few slides help guide you through that a little bit. And so I'll explain a little bit more what this template could help you with. So it's going to be a slot for each grade in high school. And again, if you've passed one, you could kind of go back and look. But then want to invite you to think of each year in high school kind of with some intentionality. So for 9th grade, we're going to really introduce the idea of the who, right? So what we want to encourage you to think about is having that wider explanation. Like, again, who am I? What is important to me? All those pieces. Okay, so when your handout comes around, you'll see some symbols that I put on there versus words because of space. But I'm going to explain what those symbols mean a little bit more. 10th grade is going to be an invitation to think about the what, right? So we're going to go a little deeper, not just wider into like, who am I? What do I want to get involved with? What do I want to try? Do I want to start a new club? How can I meet people who have common interests as me? All those pieces. And then in 11th grade, we're going to talk a little bit more about the where. So those goals, kind of putting a few more things in more intentional practice. We'll have one more way to do that in just a little bit. And then finally, the big 12th grade, top of the heap, the how. So the goal hopefully is when you get to senior year, right? It isn't like, oh no, senior year. That's a good goal, right? Hopefully it'll be a good time for reflection and kind of treasuring kind of the steps that you've taken along the way. And of course there's going to be stress and worry. And you put yourself out there when you apply to a college. You don't know if you're going to get in or what your status will be, but all you can control is how you present yourself. And if you present yourself in a way that's authentic to what you've learned about yourself, that's the best you can do. And I'm just a big believer in connection and that like where you land is going to be where you're meant to be. So when you get your paper, again, you're invited to jot down some notes. If you're a parent, you could do kind of what your impression is of your kind of child's journey. If you're a student, feel free to fill it out for you, and then you can compare, which will be kind of fun. So here we go. Okay, so let's just look at the 9th grade side. For just a minute, I encourage you to kind of look at those symbols and let me tell you a little bit more about what I'm hoping they'll mean. So with the brain symbol, I want you to start thinking a little bit about just that intellectual side. Meaning, in classes that you're in, what classes are you really enjoying? You're in the registration period right now in high school, right? So you have some choices to make no matter what grade you're in. Which classes are you wanting to maybe become a cluster of things in high school? To dig a little deeper or learn more, right? It's also paying attention like how you think, right? So it's not only just what you like, but like how you study. Are you a really good memorizer? Are you a really good note taker? How are you using your brain power for your best success? Then under the foot, the physical, right? That does not mean you need to be on a team sport at all, but it does mean how are you taking care of your body, right? That might tie into like good rest, but also, even just a practice. The cool thing about college too is that the gym is like the hotbed of kind of like hanging out, whether it be yoga classes, pickleball, right? Things that are for fun. But even now, think about, what are you doing to taking care of your body? Again, it could be a team sport. In college, you might be at a varsity level, but there's so many clubs and intramurals. Like sports are a huge part of kind of that next level of your journey. So start thinking now, what's fun for you? Service, kind of the hands. Again, that's back to that caring and that making caring common piece. What do you really care about? How do you want to engage? So maybe that is like a volunteer opportunity, a group that you really want to get involved with at school that is volunteer driven, or in the community. One of my personal favorites is like One Gen Away, which is an amazing local organization that you can go as a family or even as a team or as a group of friends, and that often ways to help our local families food. And then finally, the ethics, and this is more of your personal values. And as a ninth grader, when we're focusing in a little bit, what matters to you, right? Your idea of justice, what does that look like? There's not a right or wrong answer, but as a ninth grader, as you're opening your door wider to new opportunities in high school, new independence, what is most important to you? You may recall that kind of links back even to the Common App question. So to help you with this journey, we have listed, and again, we'll have this PowerPoint. These are embedded, so you can click and go. If this is helpful for you, you'll have access to it at the end. But there's lots of great tools. I could speak for days about the Clifton Strengths Finder, which is a talent development assessment tool. That one is not free. That would have to be as a family to decide if you want to take it, but the VIA, the Values and Actions, is. And it just gives you an opportunity to answer some questions and learn what rises to the top of what you value. So I'd encourage you, explore these different opportunities. And again, Andy mentioned earlier about the Science of Wellbeing for Teens. That is a free link that has an app and different strategies for your care. Any questions? Okay. So again, for 10th grade, the categories are the same, and who knows, when you jot down like what intellectually you love or what you're interested in, it might be the same as 9th grade, which is great. But it might be totally different. You might take one class and have one teacher here at school who is just like rock your world, like I love this person. I know my son has one of those teachers here that we still talk a lot about, and he's a junior in college, right? So it just changed his course because of who he was and how he taught. So going on to physical, again, how you want to be active, what you're passionate about with taking care of your body. But do notice after the service, I did switch it up a little bit about ethics. This isn't just now about you as a sophomore. When you go deeper, we want to think about like, what are you valuing at school? What are you valuing about different careers? Valuing about even the hobbies you have. Certainly even the idea of like in government, that there's opportunities for you to think about that justice and what's important or how you want to make an impact. You don't even have to be elected to be on it to have a voice. What is your voice? So again, we have some more different tools that we'd recommend to dig a little deeper into that deeper exploration service. The ECT, which has a lot of different features of preparation, also has a career interest inventory. So 10th grade is really a good time to like look a little more into career matches or learning more about classes, or because come junior and senior year, you hopefully will have more room in your schedule to have those electives. Okay. All right, big 11th grade. It has a reputation for being the hardest sometimes, right? But it depends on kind of how you look at it. Yes, hopefully you're going to find some areas of study that you're like, I really want to challenge myself with, AP classes. I want to challenge myself with kind of really going deeper, but also setting goals out of that would be really wise. College search engines. I mean, it's amazing now, the technology, right? If you've looked at and done some college virtual tours, like you literally look like you're standing on the campus, right? Check it out. I mean, the junior year is a really good time to see, what do you like? Are you drawn to, near a city? Are you really wanting to have space in the country? Are you really wanting to have certain programs or certain size of a school? Dig a little deeper junior year especially, and you really can do that with visits online as well as in person. I really want to highlight too, like meeting with alumni and even some of our, Brentwood High alumni who come back to visit, have a chance to chat with them, or even someone in your neighborhood if they're at a certain college. And say, hey, I just text you or call you, and what do you like about it? What's it all about? Because they're living the life, and that's going to help you learn the most about that. We do have one more handout that we want to give out. I'm still a paper lover. We love technology, but paper still, this one's golden. So here it comes. Yes, and we have links to these as well, but if you want to have a paper copy, feel free to take one. But this handout that is coming around, again, it's gold. Okay, again, it may look familiar, the Making Caring Common. This is one of their resources about conversation starters for creating a sane, healthy college admission process with your teen. So this is designed for parents and students to have some really good conversation about college. And this handout, our boys are kind of on the other side, but this was really one that I like, wow, these questions are amazing, and they're a way to bridge an open conversation versus saying, where do you want to go to school, right? It goes a lot deeper. So you're gonna have a copy of that going around. We put a few kind of bonus questions at the bottom as well, because that gives you a chance to even come together as a family and say, well, which question is the hardest? Which one meant nothing? Like you were like, oh, it doesn't matter to me. Sometimes the what it's not in this college search gives you more information to getting closer to what it is. Right? Eventually you're gonna have to knock things off the list of what you're looking for. For sake of time, we're going to keep going. Hopefully that handout will be a really great resource. Okay, so the big hurrah. Senior year. Okay. So senior year, there are different pieces of kind of charting your path and making your mark, and we just kind of wanted to highlight again that treasure box is kind of a new piece on your map of the white paper that you have, because again, the goal will be hopefully by the time the application time starts, that you will have a real sense of who you are and what you're looking for with the step beyond high school. So a few tools to consider, especially senior year, that we want to highlight. We've talked a little bit about the Common Application. Andy's going to talk in a minute about just all the AI technology. I don't know if you're following that. It's kind of like a hot topic right now. We'll mention that in a second. But early application, a lot of times seniors will say, oh, should I apply early decision or early action? This is just from our personal journey that I'll just share with our boys who both applied early decision to their colleges. is that if you do get to a point where you're ready to commit and say, I get in here, this is where I'm going as a family, it really does make your senior year a lot smoother and calmer, and just kind of gives you that piece of, I have my plan, I've done my research, and now I can really enjoy all that senior year has to offer. Is that going to be the path for everyone? No, and that's okay, because there's a lot of factors to consider. Scholarships, all sorts of things, family commitments, location. But our hope is by mapping through this is that it will help you get to a point by senior year that you will have a really good idea, at least of your group of schools that you're interested in, instead of feeling like, I don't know where I'm going to apply to. That's our hope. And then again, the Career Shadow Day, keep talking, having those conversations will be really helpful. But Andy, if you want to share a little bit about the AI, that might be something good too.
Yeah, and you may notice we didn't mention anything about college stuff really until 11th grade. Really, freshman, sophomore year really should be around that self-exploration. And then you can start turning it over in 11th grade and maybe even into 11th grade and really start thinking seriously about, okay, what has this all taught me about where I want to go? And then when you actually have to fill out the Common App and you get to do the essays, you might be, if you're a student now, compelled to say, well, maybe I'll just drop this into Chat GPT and try the AI to get it to write my Common App for me. Those of you who don't know what that is, you can find it and just drop any question and it will write essays for you. And they're already studying this. Actually, somebody at Princeton who's already a student at Princeton has already figured out an AI to determine if somebody wrote their thing on ChatGPT. So this is a whole new frontier. But they've done a study, just a really quick study, put all the Common App questions into it. And you can always hit refresh if you don't like what it initially tells you, and then they write it again. And they do a really good job of writing answers, by the way. They were noting how grammatically correct the answers were on all of that, except what do you think it was missing in the Common Application? Yes?
Feeling and kind of like what the student himself like kind of during an essay writing, you have to have your certain passion. Like when I wrote my essay for Common App, I was like interested in what I wanted to do, and I had this certain passion, and that's what really makes you stand out kind of in an application.
You needed plant rate.
Oh, that is a great answer. Yes. Yeah, passion, personality, something personal to you that's also coming out in the rest of your application and the things that you're interested in. So those are things that AI can't do. Maybe you can give a start, but certainly over time, those are going to be the things that help you stand out amongst other people. So, in the spirit of beginning with the end in mind, I'll show a clip here from the film The Legend of Bagger Vance. We may have some golfers in the room. If not, doesn't matter. This is a golf movie. Oh, yeah.
Is an application automatically suspect if it's screening grammatical errors?
So the question is, would they already be suspect of you if you turned in an application that was free of grammatical errors? They're thinking there's no human writing it. No, I don't think that's true. I mean, I certainly think, you're certainly going to want to make sure you're writing something that's strong, that's part of what they're looking for. But I also think they're really trying to see the personality of the student. And believe me, the people that read admission applications read hundreds of them. And so they're very fine-tuned to not, in the past it wasn't AI writing it, it might be somebody else writing it for the student. So they're already kind of attuned to, did somebody else write this essay than the person writing it? So yeah, a grammatical error too might reveal that maybe a student did it, but I don't think that alone. They're really trying to see, does this person's personality shine through? And what are they choosing to talk about? And those are things that they're looking for. And are they writing about themselves or are they writing about someone else? A lot of mistakes people make in writing the Common Application essay is they write a really beautiful story about a child or some charitable organization or something like that. By the time you get to the end of it, you realize they really didn't say anything about themselves. They said something about the charity, they said something about the person they helped, and there was nothing about the writer. And so that's actually the most important part of it of all. We have one moment just for more questions here, just a second. No, I think actually, yeah, I think if you press play, it should go.
Oh, yes. Greatest game there is. Right, Hardy?
Yes, sir.
Can we get a little more volume, please?
Me. Just you and the ball. All by your lonesome. Time for what?
Time for you to see the field.
The field? I see the field. It's 445 yards long. It's got a little red flag at the end of it. It's 12 strokes ahead.
That ain't it. Because if you seen the field, you wouldn't be hacking at that ball like you was chopping weeds out from under your front porch.
Just give me the club.
Sorry I bring it up. Hey, you gonna take that back away.
All right, what's the field?
Fix your eyes on Bobby Jones.
Give me a piece of work here right now. Leave it in. Knock it out there, Bubba.
Please practice fine. Almost like it's searching for something. Then he finds it. Watch how he set this up right into the middle of it. Feel that focus. And he got a lot of shots he could choose from. Duffs and tops and skulls. There's only one shot that's in perfect harmony with the field. One shot that's his. Authentic shot. And that shot is going to choose him. There's a perfect shot out there trying to find each and every one of us. What we got to do is get ourselves out of its way. Let it choose us. Look at him. He in the field. Can't see that flag as some dragon you got to slay. And they look with soft eyes. See the place where the tides and the seasons and the turning of the earth all come together. And everything that is becomes one. You got to seek that place with your soul, John. Seek it with your hands. Don't think about it. Feel it. Your hands is wiser than your head ever gonna be. I can't take you there, John. Just hopes I can help you find a way. If that's you, that ball, that flag, and all you are, seek it with your hands. Don't think about it. Feel it. Feel it. It's just you. One shot that's in perfect ball. You don't see it.
It's the home of your authentic swing, that flag, and all that you are.
things I like about that clip. One is when the flag comes closer to him, it's a little bit of that experience of beginning with the end in mind. But one nice connection between life and sports is that, remember that big wheel I showed you at the beginning? We talked about like the first 3 quarters of it were all the work you did to like learn and to get all that knowledge and learn the behaviors, and the 4th one was to go. Well, if you've done your preparation, you can do what Will Smith was saying. That is, don't think about it. Just feel it. And notice we talked about developing a sense of self. It wasn't a thought of self. It was a sense of self. So when it comes about making a college decision, you don't have to really think about it at that point because you've done years of preparation to that point. And then when you feel like this is the right fit for me, it's authentic and it's not just by something spurious. Then guess what? You get to college, and the search is not over. Because then we all those big theories I talked about earlier, there's one big one that doesn't start until age 18, and it's called emerging adulthood. And the students that I teach at Vanderbilt, it's very popular because they're almost all this age, 18 to 29. That's where all that other stuff starts to maybe sink in a little bit, and the growth continues. And I'm going to close here with a poem. It's a poem I read on the first day of graduate school, or actually the first semester of graduate school for my counseling students. And in that first semester, this is a poem. It's called Pilgrim in Process. It's a very long poem, but this is the very end of it. I thought I would just read it for you here, and then if you've got any questions, we'll have a few minutes for you to ask some questions. Do be gentle, process pilgrim. Learn to trust, that trust is dear. And the same is true of laughter and of rest. Please remember that the living is a loving in itself, and the secret is to ever be in quest.
So this QR code is the link to the slideshow that we just showed you. So if you scan that, you'll have access to the slides if you want to go back and talk about it or share them. So we did talk a little more globally, right, about the process of finding your X and hopefully what that treasure will be. This is actually a quote from Long John Silver. We thought that was a good connector to the treasure map, that you got the makings of greatness in you, but you got to take the helm and chart your own course. So hopefully some of the things that we shared gave you an opportunity to think about your course and maybe have an opportunity to, set on it in maybe a new and exciting way. But we do welcome questions, and if it is a little more specific about our personal journey, that's fine. If you have questions just about a global sense of college search, we're welcome to take questions. But if you do feel like need to leave, we totally understand. This would be a time that you may do that unless you have questions to share. So thank you for having us tonight.